Yes, I don't believe that China will exist as we know it in 10 years. I believe that China will have fallen apart. It will have divided up and possibly gone into catastrophic civil war, costing tens of millions of lives. So I don't believe that China is long for this world. I do not believe we'll be living in a multipolar world. I believe that we'll be living in even more of a unipolar world than we're living in now. I believe the United States will be more powerful vis-a-vis its competitors in 10 years than the United States is today. I believe that essentially the United States will be a rogue nation that will simply dictate how things will work, and there will be certain alliances that the United States will have, such as with Mexico, with Canada, with Australia, Japan, and the United Kingdom. And all those countries essentially have to be vassals of the United States. And in exchange for that, they get to have some special relationship with the United States. But I think the United States will set the terms of what goes on in the world even more decisively in 10 years, and look for China to completely fall apart and devolve in civil war, I would guess, in the next.
I just want to reiterate my point because in 10 years' time, I think people will be watching this or listening to it that I disagree with what Luke just said, just to be as clear as possible about that. From Row House, do you guys believe in the terms moderate or centrist? Do you guys believe in the terms moderate or centrist matter much anymore? Do you guys see yourselves as centrist or moderate on some issues? Also, was Bill Clinton a moderate? I tend to think of him as Clinton was moderate relative to today's Democratic Party. He's also relative to obviously the left wing of the Democratic Party during his own day and age. He was always center left, but you could say he was a moderate, but one certainly who leaned leftward. But still, I would say on a very technical basis, a moderate all the same, and certainly a moderate relative to today's Democratic politics and relative to the left wing of his time in office, the 1990s to early 2000s. Now, also as to whether or not I see myself as centrist or moderate on some issues, my political views are all over the place. As I said, they generally do pull toward the right, though. On some issues, people might see me as a centrist. On other issues, some people might see me as being very clearly on the right. On other issues, people even call me a liberal or a progressive or whatever. But no, I'm a socio-political realist. It's hard to say I'm a centrist or a right winger or anything like that because my views are just so much all over the place. So I wouldn't use any of those labels to describe myself. But anyway, now also as for K Max asked, do I believe in the terms moderate or centrist, whether or not they matter much anymore? They matter in the sense that people, particularly left leaners, who don't want to think of themselves as Bernie Sanders supporters, they will call themselves moderates. Doesn't amount to much though, because the people who they vote for are going to vote generally as their party dictates, and the left wing of the Democratic Party is ascendant within the party itself, so that's going to have more and more pull. Certainly, the left wing of the Democratic Party today has more power than it did 5 years ago, 2016, and that's a trend which is going to continue because of political demographic shifts. So I think that for those people, for those Democrats who don't like the Sandersistas, moderate and centrism still matter as terms. I don't think they matter much beyond that, even though some Republicans do like to think of themselves as centrist or moderate. But I think that as the country becomes more polarized, the entire concept of being a centrist or a moderate has less and less appeal. Luke, anything to say about what Row House brought up?
Yeah, I think centrist or moderate has power in some circumstances, and in other circumstances, it's a losing formula. So sometimes it's a winning formula, sometimes it's a losing formula. Like everything else, it is contingent. It is dependent on context, time, and place, and events. So a moderate centrist stand may look magnificent one moment and look like weak tea the next moment because events have changed. But one through line that I see is that you should not engage in rhetoric or behavior that energizes and arouses your opposition more than it energizes and arouses your supporters. So I saw that Trump did a lot of things that energized and aroused his opposition more than he energized and aroused his supporters, and that's why Trump lost. Trump lost the 2018 and the 2020 elections by losing the suburbs by 2%. And I think that's the problem. And I think that the alt-right flamed out by doing things that titillated their supporters. They fired up their opponents to a degree that was absolutely unfathomable to the alt-right, and the alt-right got absolutely crushed because they didn't think about the consequences of what they're doing. So you could blast music from your window like late at night, and have complete disregard for your neighbors, but there are probably going to be negative consequences to that. So you can treat your neighbors badly 1 minute and you think, yeah, I got away with that because I'm such a powerful person, but you have no idea of the whirlwind that you may be reaping through energizing your opposition.
There's no question that Trump did supercharge his opposition, but it's also worth noting that the Democrats have been more and more supercharged by any Republicans from 2004 onward, because any Republican presidential nominee has been increasingly demonized by the media, which is ever more polarized, ever more partisan. And as a result of that, people on the left tend not to hear any as much good stuff about Republicans as they used to. And same thing with people on the right. They don't hear as much good stuff about Democrats as they used to. But especially on the left, any Republican from 2004 onward has been increasingly demonized by the press. Mitt Romney, who went out of his way to be inoffensive, was demonized more than McCain was. McCain went out of his way to be inoffensive. He was demonized more than George W. Bush was. And then Donald Trump came along and really did add fuel to the fire. But at the same time, even though he accelerated the trend existed with or without him. And I think that the reason for this trend is because in the year 2000, so many people just could not accept the results of that election. They were very sketchy, by the way. I'm not saying that they were actually that Bush actually won that thing, but the results were very sketchy. People on the left felt that they had won and then been defeated, and so as a result, they in the media, the left grew ever more angry toward the GOP, which began to be viewed as not only politically unfortunate but politically illegitimate. And certainly that's where we're at today, but on steroids. So that's the situation there. As far as the suburbs go, the GOP has been losing ground there since 1990. And Trump just accelerated the trend of a lot of the same people who voted against him, either literally 2016 or by proxy in 2018, or literally again in 2020. A lot of them were on the fence with the GOP to begin with. There was more and more people you saw in the media who were leaving the GOP from the time of McCain onward, because it was getting too partisan, too nasty, too mean toward Barack Obama. And this whole thing is part of a cultural realignment wherein the educated, suburban dwelling class, and some urbanites as well, a few rural people, but it's mostly suburban and urban, they find it less and less socially desirable to be affiliated with the Republican Party. And Trump absolutely did accelerate this trend. He played a role in making it what it is now. It's not like he had no part in it, but the trend has existed since 1992, and he simply accelerated it. And there's no indication that it's going to stop anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it just got, like I said, supercharged in the 2000s, and Trump, he cranked it up to number 11.